there everyone, welcome to Toons. I'm Luke and today we're going to be looking at the Gorillasaurus on a very special Flintstones themed episode of The Myth Behind the Monsters. The myth behind the monsters. So, to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Flintstones, I'm making a series of videos exploring different aspects of the Flintstones franchise. And in today's episode of The Myth Behind the Monsters, we're going to be taking a look at the Flintstones' very own take on the Scooby-Doo formula with the Pebbles, Bamm-Bamm and Dino segments. Throughout the 1970s, Hanna-Barbera made numerous attempts to capitalise on the success of Scooby-Doo by creating many Scooby clone series. These series featured a group of teenage mystery solvers accompanied by some sort of anthropomorphic talking mascot, and featured the classic Scooby mystery formula that we all know and love. And by 1980, it was time for Hanna-Barbera to try out this formula on one of their other biggest franchises, the Flintstones, with a segment featuring the teenage versions of Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm that were first seen in the Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm show, alongside Dino. These segments featured in the variety show style series The Flintstones Comedy Show, or Flintstones Frolics outside of North America. Now, the Gorillasaurus technically first appeared in the episode Dial S for Suspicion, but as a monster chasing the gang, he first appeared in the episode The Show Must Go On. The episode starts with Pebbles, Bamm-Bamm and Dino arriving at the abandoned Bedrock Bijou, an old music venue, looking for somewhere to host their school talent show. When they find an opening in the boards, they decide to squeeze their way in and take a look around. Initially, all they find is a bunch of old costumes, but Dino gets spooked in a mirror and sees a Gorillasaurus. Pebbles, of course just thinks Dino is being his usual scared self, and continues to talk to Bamm-Bamm in his impressive Wolfosaurus costume. Except, he's not wearing a costume, Pebbles. Run! They run into a saber-toothed Tigerosaurus and a Gorillasaurus. I don't know. Once they've barricaded themselves backstage, Pebble finds a clue that solves everything.
It explains everything!
Back on stage, Dino is being chased by the Gorillasaurus. After a bunch of great gags, the prehistoric ape manages to catch our favourite Snorkosaurus. This gives Pebble a chance to, spoiler alert for a 40-year-old episode, unmask him and reveal that the Gorillasaurus is really a man.
A little old man!
Garbanzo the Great, a puppet master who has been living in the Bedrock Bijou since it has closed down. The other monsters that the gang saw were actually puppets that he was controlling with strings to scare people away from his home and let him live in peace. Then Pebbles comes up with her greatest idea yet. They get exactly what they want and hold the talent show at the Bijou, and the great Garbanzo just helps them. I don't really think that's a compromise, Pebbles. I'm not really sure what he gets out of that. He wanted to be left alone. This is the exact opposite of that. Maybe it's his love of performing? I don't know. The Gorillasaurus in the episode is a giant green Gorillasaurus. What's a Gorillasaurus? Well, it's a prehistoric gorilla. Duh. But the Gorillasaurus turned out to actually be a marionette puppet, which probably explains both its size and why it was green, because they aren't normally. This is the part where I remind you to like the video. It really helps out the channel and allows me to keep bringing more myths at you. And if you've not done so yet, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell to be notified the next time there's a monster on the loose. You know, and it's going to keep you up to date with all my Flintstones 60th anniversary content. So we previously looked at the trope of apes and gorillas being used as monsters and villains in our episode covering the Ape Man. But see, in that episode we stopped at 1969, which is when that episode of Scooby-Doo came out. Well, this episode came out in 1980 and a lot of real significant stuff happened between those years. Like a lot. Well, okay, not really. But there were a few things. From 1974 to 1978, Jane Goodall watched as the Gombe chimpanzee war unfolded between two factions of a chimpanzee tribe. The conflict was said to affect her deeply and completely changed her views on the nature of these animals. In 1976, the Scooby Gang will come across another gorilla in the No-Face Zombie Chase, where the gorilla chased the gang to get his hands on the Golden Galleon. Challenge of the Super Friends in 1978 featured Gorilla Grodd, a giant evil telepathic gorilla, as a member of the Legion of Doom. He had first appeared in Flash comics back in 1959. And in the other various Scooby clones from throughout the 1970s, ape-themed villains appeared in the following shows. 1971. The Funky Phantom episode, Mudsie Joins a Circus, features the gorilla Gigantua robbing the circus. In 1976, there is a giant robot gorilla, Ting Kong, in the episode Ting Kong of Dino Dog Wonder. Madam Ape also appeared in the episode Madam Ape Face in 1977. In 1978, in an episode of The Buford Files, a chimp steals a diamond in Don't Monkey with Buford. That's not as many as I thought. Now, I could be missing one or two examples. Not every series had the most descriptive episode descriptions. Some of them didn't even mention the villain or the monster, just that trouble was afoot. So, like I mentioned earlier, the Gorillasaurus featured many appearances in the Flintstones franchise before he was turned into a monster for this episode. We first saw a Gorillasaurus at the circus in the 14th episode of the 3rd season of the original series. And again at the circus we would see one in the following season's 5th episode. There is a Gorillasaurus on the island in Fred's Island, the 22nd episode of the 6th and final season of the original Flintstones series. The Gorillasaurus would next appear in the Flintstones Comedy Hour in the segment A Pound in Time, where one is seen running on a hamster wheel at the gym to work the massage machine. In a Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm show episode of the Flintstones Comedy Hour, Beauty and the Beast, we see people dressed up as Gorillasauruses at the costume party. In the first episode of the new Fred and Barney show, Barney is transformed into a Gorillasaurus by the episode's titular sandwich. In the very first episode of the Flintstones Comedy Show, during the Bedrock Cops segment, a Gorillasaurus escapes the zoo Fred and Barney are guarding. In an earlier Pebbles, Bamm-Bamm and Dino segment, a Gorillasaurus mechanical toys. In a Dino and Cave Mouse segment, a Gorillasaurus escapes the zoo due to everyone laughing at him. Aww. When it comes to the legacy of the monster, there isn't really much to talk about because there isn't really a huge legacy for this show. Overall, the show went on for 2 seasons and there were 18 segments produced of the Pebbles, Bamm-Bamm and Dino series. I thought it was an interesting look at the Scooby formula. It sort of gives you the sense of what the dynamics of the gang would be like if it was just Fred, Daphne and Scooby. Sure, Bamm-Bamm can sometimes get scared like Shaggy does, but I do think in most episodes takes on a role much similar to Fred. You know, we sometimes see him wanting to trap the monster, and I do think he falls into the archetype of like the jock character, so he is sort of an amalgamation of Fred and Shaggy, but more so leaning towards Fred. Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm normally split off on their own like Fred and Daphne would, and then Dino is left to be chased by the monster like Scooby and Shaggy would. So I do think it is interesting to see a Scooby show with only those 3 types of characters. After this, the Flintstones would move away from the mystery element, and as the next series was the Flintstones Kids, which followed the babyfication trend of the late 80s, started with the Muppet Babies, but in the Flintstones franchise. As such, with their parents being kids, Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm were dropped completely from the show. If you wanted more adventures with Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm, well, you would get the chance to see their adult life in some various TV movies and specials. However, Pebbles, Bamm-Bamm and Dino would go on to get entire series dedicated to them. Cave Kids featured Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm as toddlers alongside Dino, as well as the Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs series, which features Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm as children or early teens alongside Dino. This series is notable for being one of the first times the 3 characters were paired together like solely on their own. Of course, the characters were seen playing with him in the original series as babies and toddlers, and Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm had spun off with their own series, the Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm Show, as teenagers, but Dino wasn't really a big part of that. They had a larger cast with the teenage friends. I feel like this series was notable in starting the trend of putting the 3 characters together for their own adventures, and although the Scooby formula mystery element would be dropped, the trio would stick together for future installments of the Flintstones franchise. In terms of the legacy of this specific series, out of all the Scooby clones, it does tend to be a little bit more forgotten about due to the fact that it wasn't its own series, it was segments of the Flintstones Comedy Show, as opposed to something like Speed Buggy or Jabberjaw, which had an entire series dedicated. But that being said, it's fun to see the Scooby formula with classic characters that you already know. I really enjoyed diving into this series for this special episode, and I hope you all enjoyed watching it as well. If you'd like to see more things like this where we take a look at some of the other Scooby series, maybe you want some more episodes focused on the monsters from this specific show, I don't know, let me know down below. Alright guys, thanks for watching The Myth Behind the Monsters. Tune in next week as we get back on schedule with our Scooby-Doo themed Myth Behind the Monster episodes. And in fact, it's just worked out that it's going to be quite a Halloween themed episode with the monsters coming up. So what did you think about the Gorillasaurus and the Pebbles, Bamm-Bamm and Dino segments? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear it from you. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Cheers. Thanks for watching Tube of Tunes. If you want more from the channel, hit subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on, follow us on our socials. Hope you liked it. Cheers.